Hello there. So, in case you've been following these Afro YouTube channels like my channel or other channels, by now you know that the Kenyan president is quickly becoming a Pan-African superstar. He's getting a lot of fans across the continent, especially after he spoke against the dollar.
As de-dollarization of the international economy,
It's really not looking good for the US dollar.
So he was in this forum in Djibouti where they were signing trade bilateral agreement between the two countries. And it is during that event that he said that Djiboutians do not need the dollar to pay for goods and services from Kenya, and vice versa. Kenyans do not need the dollar to pay for Djiboutian goods. They just need the Djiboutian franc, and the Djiboutians need the Kenyan shilling. This is the speech that has earned him all these fans, and it even got him a standing ovation. Everyone who was there stood up and clapped for him. But now the question, is it possible? Did he mean it? Because truth of the matter is, trade in Africa, or what we call intra-African trade, is still done in dollars. African countries are even forced to take loans from the IMF and the World Bank in dollars so that they can clear their debts with neighboring countries. That is what happens. So is it easy? Because truth of the matter is, if any African countries tries to do without the dollar, they are done, finished. So I'm going to show you a short video. Then after that, I'm going to explain what I mean by saying that they are finished.
Okay. The first question is a very important question. What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in US dollars. Africa has to earn the US dollars, and the only way it can earn the US dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for IBRD, research, the World Bank, is that no country should grow its own food. Africa and the third world should only grow export crops. To export, in order to have an oversupply of cocoa and other tropical raw materials, to keep down the price, they must buy their grain from the United States or Europe, so that if they do something that we don't like, we can do what America tried to do to China in the 60s. We can sanction them. We can say, we're going to starve you. We're going to not export any grain to you. So owing their foreign debt in dollars means that they have to somehow sell something that the United States wants, not what they want. I think the most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
So from that video, it's clear that African countries cannot do without the dollar, because a lot of them have debts and they have to repay those debts in dollars because they took those debts in the same currency, the dollar. The other thing is that we have Africa, we have the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which is the institution that are almost like branches of the United States military that give out these loans to these African countries, and they expect these same African countries to repay the same debt or loans in dollars. So they need the dollars for that purpose. And again, now you've also heard that the US uses the dollar as a form of as a weapon, if you can say that, as a weapon, so that countries cannot stray away from the dollar. So, for example, all African countries, the central banks in those countries have the dollar as the foreign currency in their reserves, and their currency, the local currencies like the Kenyan shilling or the Ugandan shilling or the South African rand is pegged on the dollar, because for you to decide how much value your currency has in Africa, you determine that basing it on the amount of foreign currency in your vault in the central bank. If the foreign currency, in this case the dollar, goes down, your currency starts tumbling down and inflation takes over. That is what is happening in countries like Kenya, for example. I've seen their currency against the dollar is doing bad. That is what happened last year in Ghana. The cedi almost basically collapsed because the foreign currency in their central bank, the dollar that is, had gone down. The volume was low. I hope now you are beginning to get the full picture. So the dollar is such a lifeline in Africa that if any president or country tries to make a move on the dollar, the economy almost immediately starts doing badly. Their currency starts, tumbling, like the Kenyan currency in this case, like the Ghanaian cedi, like the Zimbabwean dollar. And even the new loans we are getting from other partners like China, they are giving those loans to us in dollars because they expect that in case we reach a point where we may not be able to pay them, there's always the guarantee that we might go to the IMF or the World Bank for a bailout where we get a new loan from them, the IMF, and repay the Chinese. That's why they give us the loans in dollars.